If you've ever been silenced, if you've ever screamed and no one heard, this story is for you. This is the story of Dolores, whose own pack poisoned her wolf into silence for 7 years. They thought they'd broken her forever. They were wrong. Because the day the new alpha felt her pain through the pack link, everything changed. And when a silenced wolf finally finds her voice, the entire world trembles. 7 years ago, Dolores had been 18 and still believed in fairness. She'd been grinding chamomile in the pack house kitchen when the screaming started. Alpha Thaddeus's voice like thunder through stone walls, shouting for the healer. Dolores had run with her mentor's bag, heart pounding with purpose rather than fear. She was promising then. Talented. The kind of Omega whose wolf sang when she mixed remedies, whose hands steadied the dying. Elijah had been convulsing in his father's arms, foam at his lips, eyes rolling white. The celebration for his 21st birthday had turned to chaos, guests pressing against doorways, the air thick with panic and expensive wine gone sour. Dolores had done everything right. Everything her mother taught her. Checked his airway, smelled his breath for toxins, sent for the physician from the next territory. But Serafina had been faster. The Luna had swept into the room like winter itself, all ice blonde hair and surgical precision, holding a teacup between 2 fingers as though it might burn. This, she'd announced to the assembled pack, was found in my son's quarters. Still warm. Still fragrant. She'd turned those frost-pale eyes on Dolores. You brought him tea this afternoon, did you not, girl? Dolores had nodded. She'd brought him willow bark and honey for the headache he'd mentioned. Nothing more. The physician had confirmed nightshade in Elijah's system. The pack council had tested the dregs in that cup, nightshade there too, perfectly preserved, as though someone had known exactly where to look. Dolores's mother, already 3 months dying of the wasting sickness, had dragged herself before the council to swear her daughter's innocence. Her testimony had carried the weight of ash light, useless, gone with the first strong wind. Mercy, Alpha Thaddeus had called it when he pronounced sentence. Not execution for an Omega who'd poisoned his heir. That would have been too kind, too quick. Instead, chemical suppression. A compound injected monthly that would sever the bond between human and wolf, silencing the animal spirit until only a ghost remained. Dolores remembered the first dose with a clarity that made her current memories feel watercolor soft. The physician's hands had been steady, professional. The liquid had burned like molten silver through her veins. And her wolf, her beautiful, gentle wolf who'd never harmed anyone, had screamed. The sound existed in a place beyond hearing, beyond enduring, a frequency that shattered something essential in Dolores's chest. Then, nothing. 7 years of nothing. The door to her servants' quarters slammed open now, no knock, no warning. 2 enforcers filled the narrow space, Caspian's men, recognizable by the cold efficiency that matched their alpha's eyes. They didn't explain. Didn't need to. Dolores was pack property, to be moved like furniture when required. She rose from her cot without protest, her bones remembering submission the way some people remembered breathing. Justice, she'd learned, was just another word for mercy. And mercy was just torture with better paperwork. Caspian found the former alpha in what had been his study, surrounded by ledgers he no longer had authority to read. Thaddeus looked smaller without his title, like a coat that had fit once, before time and poor decisions had changed the shape of the man inside it. The poisoner, Caspian said without preamble. Dolores Thorne. Tell me about her trial. Thaddeus didn't look up from his whiskey. Ancient history. Girl tried to kill my son, got what she deserved. 7 years of chemical suppression. Caspian dropped the medical file on the desk. 7 years of records, each monthly injection documented with the thoroughness of someone covering their tracks. That's not punishment. That's systematic destruction. It was mercy, Thaddeus said, and actually believed it. Caspian could smell the self-righteousness, sour beneath expensive cologne. The healer Caspian had brought from his own pack, Dr. Reeves, 40 years of experience and zero tolerance for politics, finished examining Dolores in the medical wing while Caspian watched through the observation glass. She'd submitted to the examination with the same hollow compliance she brought to everything, eyes focused on some middle distance that might have been peace or might have been nothing at all. Impossible, Reeves muttered, studying the blood work. 7 years of monthly doses at this concentration, her wolf should be completely catatonic. Brain dead, essentially. The spirit would have stopped fighting after the first year, maybe 2. He looked up, something like horror crossing his weathered features. Alpha, she should be a husk. But these readings. He tapped the screen. There's still neural activity in the primal cortex. Faint, but present. Her wolf is still there. Still there. Still screaming. Caspian felt it then, a phantom sensation through the pack link he'd established when he took leadership, a frequency just below conscious hearing, constant and raw. Like a wolf had been howling for 7 years in a soundproof room, and no one had noticed because no one had bothered to listen. He closed his eyes and found the memory waiting in Dolores's fractured presence within the pack bond. That first year, when the poison was new and her wolf still had strength to struggle. The animal spirit clawing against chemical chains, desperate to surface, to shift, to be. And Dolores, trapped in human skin, feeling every moment of her wolf's agony while servants stepped around her in corridors, while Serafina's voice dripped elegant. Disdain, while her mother died, and even grief couldn't give her wolf voice enough to howl. A weapon. That's what Thaddeus had made of his authority, something sharp and surgical, designed to cut away dignity and call it justice. Stop the injections, Caspian ordered. Reeves went still. Alpha, withdrawal at this stage. Her system's been dependent for years. The shock could kill her. We'd need to wean her off gradually, and even then. I said stop them. Caspian's voice carried alpha command, immovable. No wolf should suffer this. I don't care what she did. Reeves nodded slowly, understanding what Caspian was really saying. He'd rather risk her death than guarantee her continued torture. Some choices, Caspian had learned, weren't about safety. They were about what kind of alpha you could still see in the mirror. The fever came in waves that felt like drowning from the inside out. Dolores had been confined to the healer's ward for 3 days when her body realized the poison wasn't coming back. The realization arrived as betrayal. Cells that had learned to function around toxicity now flailing in its absence, neurons misfiring, wolf spirit stirring in a prison it had forgotten how to escape. Dr. Reeves kept her sedated through the worst of the convulsions, but sedation couldn't touch the place where her wolf lived. That creature was waking in the dark of Dolores's mind, confused and feral, scrabbling at barriers that had calcified over 7 years of chemical suppression. In the spaces between consciousness, Dolores heard her mother's voice, not memory, but something closer, something that tasted like fennel and wood smoke. "The gift is in your blood, little one. They can poison the vessel, but never the source." Her mother had said that once, years before the accusation, before the nightshade, before everything went to ash. Dolores had been 10, learning to sense the healing properties in plants, and her mother had pressed a hand over her heart. "Remember, what lives here is older than their laws." Caspian came on the 4th night, when Reeves had finally stopped hovering and the ward had gone quiet except for Dolores's ragged breathing. She was awake, barely, skin fever bright, and sheened with sweat, restraints on her wrists because the thrashing had gotten dangerous. He pulled a chair to her bedside and sat. Didn't speak at first. Just existed there, solid and present, his alpha authority dimmed to something almost gentle. "The alpha who raised me," he said finally, voice low, "used to call discipline character building." He had creative interpretations of both words. His hands rested loose on his knees, but Dolores could see the old tension in them, muscle memory of bracing for impact. "I learned early that authority could be a weapon. That the strong didn't have to be just. They just had to be strong." Dolores's throat worked. Tried to shape words. Failed. "You don't have to talk," Caspian continued. I wanted you to know. I understand what it's like when the people who should protect you are the ones who destroy you instead." Something fractured in Dolores's chest, not breaking, but cracking. Like ice under pressure. And from that crack came a sound she hadn't made in 7 years. A whimper, small and animal, born from the wolf-shaped space inside her. Caspian went very still. The whimper grew. Strengthened. And Dolores felt her wolf move, not physically, not yet, but in that liminal space where human and animal met. Her eyes flashed silver blue, just for a heartbeat, just long enough. The pack link exploded with sensation. Every wolf in Caspian's territory felt it simultaneously, power like lightning through a copper wire, rage that tasted like nightshade and silver, grief so profound it bent the world at its edges. Not violence. Not madness. Just a wolf who had survived her own death, announcing that she was still here. Still fighting. Still alive. Thorn, Caspian's beta, no relation to Dolores despite the shared surname, had the kind of methodical mind that made him dangerous to liars. He spread the original case files across the war room table like evidence of a crime, which Caspian was beginning to suspect they were. 7-year-old testimony, Thorn said, tapping the transcripts. All from pack members who saw Dolores entering Elijah's quarters that afternoon. But none of them actually witnessed her giving him anything. They just saw her in the hallway. Caspian wanted Dolores present for the investigation, wanted her to tell her side finally, but when they brought her to the war room, still weak, still learning to hold her wolf inside skin that had forgotten the shape of it, the words wouldn't come. Her mouth would open, throat working, and then nothing. Like speech itself had been another thing the poison had stolen. She'd managed to scratch on paper instead. "I brought willow bark in morning." He said headache. I left it on his desk. Never saw him drink anything. The door opened without warning and Serafina swept in like she'd been invited. Omega authority, the kind that came from beauty and breeding rather than strength, and she wielded it like a blade wrapped in silk. "Dolores," she breathed, all manufactured concern. "Cousin, I heard about your," she gestured vaguely, "condition. I came as soon as I could. To help, of course." Her eyes were the same frost pale as Caspian remembered from reports, and just as warm. Dolores went very still. The kind of stillness prey animals adopted when predators circled. "Your help isn't required," Caspian said flatly. "This is pack business." "She's my blood," Serafina countered and smiled. "Surely family has some right to." "No." Caspian's alpha command cracked through the room. "You can leave." Serafina left, but her perfume lingered, expensive and faintly chemical. The rail break came 2 days later, when Thorn tracked Elijah to the Moonstone territory 300 miles north. He'd left his father's pack shortly after Caspian took leadership, and he came back reluctant, defensive, already prepared to repeat the story he'd told 7 years ago. Except when Caspian asked him directly, "Did Dolores Thorn give you tea that afternoon?" Elijah hesitated. The tea was there when I woke from a nap. I just assumed." "Did you see her give it to you?" "No." Elijah's certainty crumbled like old paper. "Someone was in my room earlier, I think. I was half asleep." "I remember," he frowned, concentration carving lines around his eyes. "Perfume. Something floral. And a woman's voice, but not." He looked at Dolores properly for the first time, seeing her instead of the crime he'd been told she committed. Not her voice. Someone older. Thorn and Caspian exchanged glances. "Someone with healer knowledge," Thorn said quietly. "Someone who'd know exactly how much nightshade to use. How to make it look like an Omega's mistake." Dolores's hand trembled as she wrote, "My mother taught Serafina too. Before she married the Alpha." Truth, Caspian thought, watching understanding ripple through his beta's expression, didn't die just because you buried it. It just waited for someone to finally start digging. The grimoire was hidden where only someone who'd grown up in the servant quarters would think to look, behind a loose stone in the old laundry room, wrapped in oilcloth that smelled like lavender and loss. Dolores found it by accident, or maybe by instinct she didn't know she still possessed. Her hands had moved without conscious thought, pressing against the wall where her mother used to stand on washing days, humming old songs in a language Dolores had never learned. The stone had given way like it had been waiting. The book itself was older than the pack house, leather-bound and written in her mother's careful hand, overlaid on pages that predated her by centuries. Not recipes, lineage. Names and abilities tracking back through generations of women who'd carried the gift in their blood. Ancient healers, her mother had written in the introduction, though the original text used a different word, anima medica. Soul menders. Dolores's hands shook as she turned pages documenting powers she'd thought were myths, purifying poisons with touch, speaking to wolves on the edge of death, sensing sickness in the pack bond before symptoms appeared. Her grandmother's name. Her great-grandmother's. Further back, entries in faded ink describing women who'd been hunted, killed, their abilities too threatening to those who preferred wolves to stay sick and dependent. The last entry was her mother's, dated 7 years ago, the night before she died. They will try to take it from her. Serafina knows what Dolores is, what she could become. The bloodline has always been a threat to those who rule through fear rather than strength. She must remember. The sentence ended mid-word, ink trailing off like her mother's hand had been pulled away, or had simply stopped moving. Caspian found Dolores in the archives hours later, the grimoire open on her lap, tears she couldn't voice tracking silent down her face. He read over her shoulder without asking permission, and she watched his expression shift as he processed implications that reached back centuries. "Ancient healers," he said finally. "I thought they were legend. The histories say they died out 200 years ago during the Purge." Dolores wrote shakily, "Not died out. Hunted down. Because they could purify wolfsbane. Could heal what alphas used to control their packs." Caspian's voice went flat, dangerous. "Someone wanted your bloodline silenced. Someone who knew exactly what you were." The grimoire described a simple spell, a test really, for those carrying dormant gifts. Dolores placed her hands flat on the page as instructed, focused on the healing intent her mother had tried to teach her before everything went dark. Her palms began to glow. Not bright, just a shimmer of silver beneath her skin, like moonlight trapped in blood. And from that light came warmth, spreading up her arms, sinking into the hollow space where her wolf lived. For the first time in 7 years, her wolf spoke. Not words, exactly. More like understanding crystallized into language, ancient and certain. Remember. Remember what she was. What they'd tried to poison out of existence. What survived anyway. Thorne found the first discrepancy in import records from 3 years ago, nightshade ordered in bulk, enough to kill a small pack twice over, signed for by Serafina herself. The second discrepancy was harder to trace. Wire transfers from 4 different territories, regular payments labeled consultation fees that totaled more than most alphas earned in a year. Caspian stood in the war room staring at spreadsheets that documented systematic destruction as a revenue stream, and felt something cold settle in his chest. "She's been selling it," Thorne said quietly. "The poison. A formula to break wolves without killing them." Look, he pulled up correspondence, emails carefully worded to avoid explicit confession, but clear enough in context. 3 packs in the last year alone, requesting behavioral management solutions for problem omegas. She's been providing the compound and dosage instructions. Creating demand, then filling it. Turning suffering into profit. Dolores was the proof of concept, Caspian realized, tasting vile. 7 years of injections. If she survived, the formula was viable for long-term use. Dr. Reeves appeared in the doorway, expression grim. "Alpha, you need to see this. I ran the blood work you requested on Marcus. Serafina's mate, former Alpha's beta, elegant and forgettable in the way of men who'd married into power. He'd been cooperative when Caspian questioned him, almost eager to help, which had struck Caspian as suspicious. Devoted mates didn't usually assist investigations into their partners. The mate bond, Reeves said, pulling up genetic markers on his tablet. It's there, but the signatures are wrong. Blood magic was used, old magic, the kind that requires consent from one party and coercion of the other. He looked at Dolores, who'd gone. Paper white. Marcus's wolf was bonded to you first. 8 years ago, before Serafina married him. The mathematics were simple and horrifying. Dolores at 17, probably unaware a bond had even formed. Marcus may be willing, maybe not. Blood magic didn't always care. And Serafina, who would have known, who'd been taught by Dolores's mother and would have recognized the signs of an emerging bond. "She stole it," Dolores wrote, hand shaking so badly the words barely legible. "My bond. Blood magic requires something from both parties," Reeves explained. "From Marcus, probably hair or saliva. From you." Dolores's eyes widened. Her hand moved to her chest, touching the space over her heart where a scar lived, faint, old, easily dismissed as a childhood injury. "She cut me," Dolores wrote. "Said I'd fallen. She bandaged it herself." Thorne pulled up calendar records. 8 years ago, 2 months before Alpha Thaddeus announced his engagement to Serafina. She would have needed Pack standing to marry him. Needed access to Pack resources. He paused. Needed the healer knowledge she could access through a stolen mate bond. Marcus, when confronted, crumbled like wet sand. "The bond never felt right," he admitted, voice hollow. "Like wearing someone else's skin." But Serafina said that's normal, that all bonds take time to settle. He looked at Dolores with something like grief. "I used to dream about you. Every night for years. Couldn't figure out why. Because his wolf had known," Caspian thought. Had been screaming the truth his human mind couldn't access. Serafina hadn't just poisoned Dolores. She'd stolen her entire future and monetized the method. Dolores's wolf woke fully on the 7th day, and it woke wrong. Not malicious. Dr. Reeves was careful to make that distinction in his reports, but warped, like a bone that had healed at an angle because no one had set it properly. 7 years of chemical torture had rewired something fundamental in the place where her human consciousness met her wolf spirit. The integration that should have been seamless felt jagged, discordant, like 2 instruments playing the same song in different keys. She could sense poison now in ways that terrified her. Walking through the pack house, she'd smell it, not nightshades specifically, but the wrongness of toxins in blood. 3 wolves in the Moonstone pack carried traces of the same compound Serafina had perfected. Omegas, all of them, with the same hollow-eyed compliance Dolores recognized from mirrors. "I can help them," she wrote to Caspian. "I know I can." She'd meant to purify the poison gently, the way the grimoire described, hands glowing silver, warmth spreading through the pack bond to find and neutralize the foreign substance. But when she touched the first victim, a young Omega named Sarah, her power surged. Not healing. Destroying. Sarah convulsed, screaming as Dolores's magic attacked poison and healthy cells indiscriminately, unable to distinguish between toxin and tissue. Dr. Reeves had to physically pull Dolores away, and even then Sarah's wolf was howling in agony, the pack link flooded with pain that made every wolf in range stagger. The whispers started immediately. "She's dangerous. The poison made her wrong. She shouldn't be allowed near anyone." Dolores heard them through walls she'd learned to navigate silently, heard fear replace pity in voices that had ignored her for 7 years. And the worst part, the part that made her wolf whimper and retreat, was that maybe they were right. Maybe Serafina had been doing the pack a favor, keeping something defective contained. Caspian found her in the healer's ward after midnight, sitting on the floor with her back against Sarah's bed. Sarah was stable now, sedated, but Dolores hadn't left. "They're afraid of me," she wrote, not looking up. "Yes." Caspian sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. He didn't lie to her, didn't offer empty comfort. Fear's a reasonable response to power that's unpredictable. Dolores's hand shook as she wrote, "What if they were right to silence me?" No. The word came hard, absolute. Listen to me. You're not broken. You're adapting. There's a difference. He turned her face toward him gently, forcing eye contact. A broken tool can't function. But you're functioning. Your wolf is just learning to work with damage that should have killed you. That's not wrong. That's survival. The door opened. Marcus stood there, looking smaller than Dolores remembered, stripped of the beta authority Caspian had revoked. "I know I have no right," he said quietly. "But I need you to know I didn't want this. Any of it. If I'd known," his voice cracked. "Can you forgive me?" Dolores looked at him, at the mate bond that had been stolen and twisted, and felt nothing. Not anger. Not longing. Just a vast, empty space where connection should have lived. She wrote simply, "The bond was never real. There's nothing to forgive." Marcus left looking more devastated than relieved. Some things Dolores was learning couldn't be fixed just because you were sorry. Caspian took Dolores to the Alpha's private study, not his office, but the small room where he kept things that mattered. Books with broken spines. A child's drawing carefully framed. Scars you couldn't see from the outside. "I need to tell you something," he said, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey and offering her one. "About why I felt your wolf screaming when no one else did." Dolores accepted the glass, but didn't drink, just held it, waiting. "The Alpha who raised me, my uncle, after my parents died, believed strength came from suffering. That comfort made wolves weak." Caspian's voice stayed level, clinical, like he was describing someone else's life. "He had a compound. Not the same as Serafina's, but similar principle. Injected it when I disappointed him, which was often. It didn't silence my wolf, just made shifting excruciating. Like my bones were breaking from the inside out." He rolled up his sleeve, showing scars Dolores had noticed before but never questioned. Chemical. Burns old and silvered with time. "I survived by becoming what he wanted. Stronger. Harder. Ruthless enough that by 17, I challenged him and won." He met her eyes. "I built this pack by collecting wolves others had thrown away. The broken ones. The too gentle ones. The ones who didn't fit the mold of what a wolf should be." A bitter smile. "Turns out there are a lot of us." "Why tell me this?" Dolores wrote. "Because I felt your pain through the pack link, and I recognized it. Different method, same goal, breaking us into shapes that serve someone else's purpose." He set his glass down, leaned forward. "And because I need you to understand what I'm offering you isn't pity. It's recognition." The study went quiet except for the fire crackling in the hearth. "You can leave," Caspian continued. "I'll give you resources, territory, protection. New identity if you want it. You've earned the right to walk away from all of this. Or you stay. Help me dismantle Serafina's operation completely. Find every pack she's sold that poison to, every Omega she's turned into a ghost." His hands curled into fists. "Fight the conspiracy that tried to erase you." Dolores wrote slowly, carefully, "Not for revenge. For the others still silenced." "The others still silenced," Caspian agreed. She stood, moved closer, close enough to see the amber flecks in his dark eyes, the tension in his jaw that spoke of control maintained through constant effort. Her hand touched his chest, feeling his heartbeat, steady, present, real. He went very still. Dolores. She wrote one-handed, not moving away. May I? Permission. Choice. The opposite of everything that had been stolen from her. Yes, he said, voice rough. The kiss was gentle, questioning, his hands cupping her face like she might break. Nothing demanding or desperate, just connection offered and accepted, deliberate as a signed contract. When they pulled apart, Dolores felt something slot into place in her chest. Not the mate bond she'd lost, but the beginning of one she was choosing. Building. Claiming. Caspian pressed his forehead to hers. Not fate, he whispered. Not theft. She smiled, the first real smile in 7 years, and rode against his color. Choice. The evidence spread across the war room table told a story bigger and darker than Serafina's ambition. 5 territories. 12 confirmed alphas purchasing the formula. Conservative estimates put victim count at 47 wolves, omegas mostly, but also betas who'd questioned authority, healers whose gifts threatened pack hierarchies, even a few alphas whose families had wanted them controllable. Dolores stood at the table's edge, one hand pressed flat against the map where red pins marked known cases. Through her gift, still unstable, still learning its own contours, she could feel them. Not individually, but as a collective frequency of suffering that made her wolf pace and snarl inside her chest. The Interterritorial Summit is in 2 weeks, Thorne said, marking the calendar. Every alpha within 1,000 miles will be there. If we're going to expose this, that's our stage. They'll deny it, Caspian said flatly. 12 alphas against one former omega with no voice? They'll call her a liar, claim she's unstable from the poison. Then we bring evidence they can't deny. Thorne pulled up financial records, chemical analysis, testimony from Dr. Reeves and the pack physician who'd administered Dolores's injections for 7 years. And we bring her. Dolores wrote shakily, I can't speak. You can, Caspian said. Your voice is coming back. Reeves confirmed it. The damage was psychological, not physical. The poison taught you silence, but it's gone now. Serafina? Fled 3 days ago. Thorne's expression went hard. Left behind her network, her suppliers, her entire operation. We've frozen her accounts, but she's gone to ground somewhere beyond our jurisdiction. The cowards escape, Dolores thought. Leave the infrastructure intact. Let others face consequences while you disappear into comfortable obscurity. But the suppliers remained. The alphas who'd purchased suffering in bulk. The pack physicians who'd administered torture and called it treatment. You'll have to testify, Caspian said gently. In front of the full summit. Tell them what was done to you. What Serafina built and who enabled it. Speak. Publicly. To an audience of alphas who'd spent centuries maintaining power through fear and control. Dolores wanted to run. Instead, she spent the next 2 weeks learning to control the gift that wanted to destroy while healing. Dr. Reeves worked with her daily small exercises, purifying trace poisons in blood samples, learning to modulate power that surged like flood water. Her wolf was eager, too eager, 7 years of silence, making it desperate to act, to fix, to matter. And she practiced speaking. Caspian sat with her in the empty council chamber, patient as stone, while she formed words that felt like shattered glass in her throat. Her voice came back in whispers first, broken, uncertain sounds that barely carried across a room. My name is Dolores Thorne, She managed on day 10 and cried because she'd forgotten what her own voice sounded like. By day 14, she could speak full sentences. Soft, still, but present. Caspian helped her write the testimony, not polished or perfect, just true. And when she practiced delivering it, her whisper found an edge that cut. One voice, speaking for 47 who couldn't. It would have to be enough. The Interterritorial Summit convened in the Grand Hall of Neutral Ground, ancient stone and older magic, designed for councils that predated modern pact structures. 50 alphas filled the chamber, their combined authority pressing against the walls like atmospheric pressure before a storm. Dolores stood at the center, Caspian a steady presence at her right shoulder. Her hands trembled holding the evidence folder, but her voice, stayed clear when she began. My name is Dolores Thorne. 7 years ago, I was accused of poisoning an alpha's son. I was innocent. The real poisoner was Serafina Thorne, who used me as a test subject for a compound she would later sell to 12 alphas in this room. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Denial, outrage, the particular offense of the powerful being accused publicly. Alpha Garrett of the Ironwood Pack stood, face florid with indignation. Documents can be forged. Testimony from a known criminal means nothing. Where's your proof beyond paper and desperation? Dolores had known this moment would come, had prepared for it in ways that made Caspian's wolf snarl with protective fury. I'll prove it, she said quietly. Bring me one of the victims. I'll purify the poison. Publicly. The chamber went silent. They brought a young Omega named River, 17, hollow-eyed, silent for 3 years according to the Crescent Moon Pack's records. His alpha, Marcus Venn, had purchased Serafina's formula to manage behavioral issues, which apparently meant River had questioned an unjust punishment and needed to be taught compliance. River stood before Dolores, swaying slightly, and she could smell the poison in his blood, familiar, caustic, wrong. This will hurt, she told him gently. But you'll be free after. Her hands found his temples. Her gift activated, not the unstable surge from before, but focused, deliberate, the product of 2 weeks' brutal training. Silver light bloomed under her palms, spreading through River's system, seeking the compound that had silenced his wolf. The grimoire hadn't explained this part. Hadn't mentioned that ancient healers didn't just neutralize poison, they absorbed it, pulling toxins into their own bodies to spare the victim. Dolores felt the first rush of nightshade and chemical suppressants flood her bloodstream and nearly screamed. 7 years hadn't been enough. Her body remembered this agony, cells recoiling in recognition as the poison she'd finally purged tried to reclaim its territory. River's 3 years of accumulated compound hit her system like liquid fire, and her wolf, still learning to be whole, fractured under the weight. But River shifted. The transformation was explosive, uncontrolled, a young wolf who'd forgotten how, learning again mid-purification. His howl shattered windows, pure and wild and free, and every alpha in the chamber felt it through the ancient magic that bound the hall. Dolores collapsed. The poison was killing her. Not slowly, like before. This was acute toxicity, multiple years' worth compressed into minutes. Her heart arrhythmic, lungs seizing, wolf screaming as chemical chains tried to reform. Caspian caught her before she hit stone, and the mate bond they'd been building fragile, new, chosen, activated with the force of a lightning strike. The burden split. Poison that would kill one wolf divided between two, and Caspian's alpha strength met Dolores's healer gift in a synthesis neither had anticipated. His wolf helped hers carry the weight. Her magic purified what entered his system, and together they survived what should have destroyed them individually. When Dolores could breathe again, she looked up at 50 alphas who could no longer deny what they'd witnessed. "The network is real," Caspian said, voice carrying absolute authority. "The poison is real. And you will answer for every wolf you've silenced." The reckoning came swift and brutal. Financial records corroborated. Pack physicians testified under oath. Alphas who'd enabled systematic torture faced their own councils, their own consequences. Serafina was found 3 weeks later, dragged back to face trial by wolves she'd trained to be obedient. The sentence was poetic and merciless. She would receive her own formula, monthly injections, for as long as she'd administered them to others. 7 years minimum. Dolores purified 47 wolves total. Each one nearly killed her. Each time, Caspian anchored her through the bond they'd forged from choice rather than fate. His strength. Her gift. Partnership built on mutual survival rather than dominant protection. Her wolf emerged fully after the 23rd purification, silver fur shot through with blue lightning, marked permanently by what she'd survived and what she'd overcome. Not beautiful in any traditional sense. Powerful in ways that made other wolves uneasy. Perfect. The Interterritorial Council created new laws prohibiting chemical suppression. Dolores became the voice, formal title, formal authority, advocate for abused pack members across all territories. She rebuilt her mother's healing practice in the space where servant quarters used to be, trained others who carried dormant gifts, created something living from legacy that had tried to die with her. The mate bond with Caspian formalized on the first anniversary of her purification, marked by scars they both carried and choice they both made daily. But she never fully healed. 7 years left marks too deep for even ancient healer magic. Her wolf would always carry that warped quality. Her voice would always rasp slightly. Some poisons she absorbed never quite purged completely. She learned to live with it. Scars as testimony. Proof of survival. 3 months after the last purification, Dolores woke with her gift screaming. Not danger. Recognition. Other ancient healers were waking across continents. She could feel them stirring, gifts activating after generations of dormancy. And with them came something else, a presence that tasted like old hunger and older purpose. On her desk, she found a message written in script her mother had shown her once, the original language of Anima Medica, predating modern pack structures. The silence was preparation. The awakening is the test. They're coming for the voices. Dolores's wolf rose inside her chest, silver blue eyes reflecting in the window glass. Not afraid. Not anymore. She touched the mate bond, felt Caspian stir awake 3 rooms away, already moving toward her. "We won't face them alone this time," she whispered to her reflection. Her voice carried. It always would.